Hello there everybody, it is me XFreezerBunny and welcome back to another Sims 4 speed build. So today we are building a medieval castle. This is a fully furnished and fully functional castle that has 10 bedrooms and let's just say an interesting number of bathrooms. I will explain a little bit later on in the video how that works, but this castle was pretty much inspired by real-life medieval castle architecture as well as castles from medieval fantasy literature, movies, television, and video games, all of which I am a huge fan of. I am quite a history buff if I do say so myself, but this castle is so big that I had to split the video into so many different parts. I ended up splitting it into 5 parts. Each part is going to focus on one aspect and one kind of area of the castle. This part is only going to be the exterior of the castle, and the reason for that is despite the references from all sorts of media, I did try to make an original castle design, so it did take me a while to figure out how the castle was going to look like in the end, which is probably why I spent so much time actually just experimenting and seeing what works. And you know, it took me a really long time to make up my mind on how I wanted the castle to look like, because I really didn't have any image in my mind on how it was gonna look like. What I had was more of like a vibe that I was going for, like, yeah, a lot of the references that I've had were more sensational, I guess, or like more of a feeling from, you know, the video games that I played and, you know, all of the different historical literature, period dramas, and all of that things that I watched. So instead of copying in a literal sense castles that exist in real life or in fiction, I kind of just tried to absorb their vibe and their energy and tried to make my own original design for a castle. So yeah, it turned out surprisingly amazing and realistic, but it also took me so long to construct, which I guess would be pretty unsurprising for a castle because these are typically really huge and really elaborate. But for the most part, I did try to go for a realistic approach to building this castle because I think that in today's modern day society, our definition of castle has changed from what it actually is during the medieval period. Because I think today when people say castle, as long as it has, you know, your typical castle appearance, I think people would accept it as a castle, even though it was probably constructed after the medieval period. But generally, medieval castle has 2 features that really define why it's a castle in the first place, and probably the most important would be the defensive feature and aspect. So every medieval castle has to function defensively, which is the reason why castles have their features of having different ramparts and battlements and all of that stuff. Another feature that also defines what a castle is that it is supposed to be a residence. A lot of people have the misconception that castles are only royal residents, but this isn't the case in many cases. Like, it could easily be the residence of like a lord or a noble, and it could still also be a castle as well. So just because a castle claims to be a castle in real life and it looks like it has battlements and ramparts, it really has to defend itself from a siege or from an attack, as well as it has to be a residence as well in order to really be considered a castle in the first place. Not to mention, it probably should have been built during the Middle Ages as well. But anyway, you guys will probably be hearing a lot of this, so hopefully you guys enjoy the technical stuff that I tend to share in my historical builds, because yeah, I am very passionate about history. I do like to think of myself as a history buff, so yeah, I try to incorporate some historical information. But anyway, yes, like I said earlier, this build was divided into 5 parts, which means that we're gonna have 5 videos throughout the week on this build alone. So that's gonna be really exciting and very long as well. Starting with part 2, which will be uploaded tomorrow. The next couple of builds will be uploaded subsequently after the second part, so you guys can pretty much expect this to be more of like a daily series. Another thing is that this castle does make use a little bit heavily a lot of custom content. I'm not sure how you guys feel about that, but the good news is that all the custom content I used are free. So all you have to do is to download the custom content from the link that I will be providing in the description below if you want this castle to look exactly like in the video. But as always, every time I do a custom content build, I will also do another CC free version, because I just find that more people tend to download CC free stuff. That will be uploaded on a later date, but for those of you guys who are interested in downloading the CC version of this build, I will provide a link in the description to my blog spot. The reason for that is I just have such a long list of custom content that it would have been way too long to include it in the actual video's description. So instead, I will make use of my blog spot, which I have never used in like 4 or 5 years. I made that blog spot when The Sims 4 first came out, and I think the last post I did was probably 2014. So yeah, I'm making good use of that and getting some use out of it. So I will be posting all of the CC links over there. Most of the CC I used came from really 2 places. I use a lot of CC from the ZXTA Tumblr, or Zixta. Can somebody please explain to me how to pronounce their name? I really don't know. I think it's Zixta or like ZXTA. And also a lot of CC was used from Historical Sims Life blogspot as well. And then I also used maybe 1 or 2 sets from the Gym 07 from Mod The Sims, and then I also used 1 item from Andrew Studio, which is the effect player, which I only used for the crocodiles actually in the moat. Yes, this castle does have a moat that is filled with crocodiles, but yeah, we will incorporate that a little bit later on in the video. But anyway, like I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, this castle has a very interesting number of bathrooms, because really we have only 2 bathrooms. I guess more specifically, bathing rooms. We only have 2 rooms with actual places for the Sims to take a bath in, but each bedroom has its own toilet and sink in the form of a chamber pot and a wash basin, which I feel like just makes things so much more realistic. It also changes how the gameplay works actually in some very interesting and substantial ways, you know? Simply having a toilet and sink in a Sim's bedroom really changes the way I ended up designing the different rooms, and it also changed how I played with my Sims as well, which I find particularly interesting and really awesome. But for the most part, this castle is just like, it's just a swan song to a lot of the things that I love. You guys seem to enjoy every time I, talk about, my passion and myself. So some of the references that really inspired this castle is, some of the things that I love growing up. Harry Potter, probably very high on the list of inspirations. Like, there's this one great Wizard's Tower, or I'd like to call it the Tower of Wisdom, which was definitely inspired by the tower from Hogwarts. I call it the Tower of Wisdom because the tower has, on the bottom floor of it, the council chamber. On the middle 2 floors, it has a 2-story library, and on the top portion of it, there is a wizard's tower. And the presence of that wizard's tower is what kind of makes me think of this build as more of a medieval fantasy as opposed to a realistic tower, because really, there wouldn't be any wizard's tower in a real-life castle, or would there be? Something tells me no, because witches and wizards were very much frowned upon during the medieval period. But anyway, some people might disagree. But still, I think this castle still turned out very realistic. Some other things that also inspired me would probably be Lord of the Rings. I was also obsessed with the films growing up. Maybe some areas like Minas Tirith and Rohan and Helm's Deep would inspire this. Also, a lot of the video games that I played growing up, Warcraft was so influential for me. I played Warcraft 3 and I was obsessed. It has a really deep lore to it, actually. For those of you guys who have played Warcraft, it has a really deep lore. Like, that really was what kept me playing Warcraft, actually. So places like Lordaeron and Azeroth, maybe Dalaran for the Wizard's Tower, you guys will get that vibe. And a lot of the things that, or a lot of the shows that I watched growing up, probably number 1 on my list would be The Tudors. I was such a fan of that show. It was such a good show. Like, oh my gosh, Henry Cavill, Natalie Dormer, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, oh my gosh, they were amazing. And when we get to the royal bedrooms, you guys will see so much of the Tudors, like, really. And let's see what else. I'm also a huge fan of The White Queen and The White Princess by Philippa Gregory. So I don't know, there's like some kind of vibe of it as well. And a lot of the video games that I played, a lot of the medieval themed video games, in particular, one of my favorite games of all time, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, I think would probably be the single most influential thing in this castle. I think this castle would probably remind people so much of places like Oxenfurt and Novigrad and maybe Kaer Morhen or like some castle in Skellige or something like that. I don't know, enough of the references and let's get back to the actual build. But yeah, anyway, at this point, I think most of the castle inside of the moat has been finished. And now we're just building the gatehouse, which is another really important defensive feature of a castle because this is what's gonna repel the enemies from actually entering the castle itself. I wasn't able to incorporate a thing in like this wrought iron gate in the medieval period that they would call, what would they call again? I don't know. This like wrought iron gate thing that would drop from the gatehouse. I know what it's called, I just forget it. Anyway, that's that. And then at this point, we're kind of just making the castle ramparts, I guess. This is basically just an outer wall. And this outer wall is, this outer wall has the feature of having the crenellations, which is basically this alternating wall height for, archers to peek out of when the castle is being attacked. Those are called crenellations. I think the taller one is called a crenelle, and then the lower one is called a merlon. Oh my gosh, I'm being so technical about this. Hopefully people aren't asleep at this point. Please wake up. But yeah, they are a little bit low. I did use half walls for the crenellations, but I feel like they still work because I think I've read somewhere or like I've heard from someone that the important thing about these defensive outer walls is that they have to cover an entire person's height. And I think that the taller walls do actually cover a sim's height, so that's pretty cool. And of course, eventually we'll also make a moat surrounding the castle as well. So that is going to be incorporated a little bit later on. I'm looking for that word that, it just bothers me how I forget that. What's it called? It's called a portcullis. There we go. Yeah, I had to Google it. It's called a portcullis. I wasn't able to include a portcullis because I wasn't really able to find a custom content item for that, but it still works. Oh, one more thing that I want to talk about before I actually wrap up this video is that for the house tour part of this video, what do you guys feel about making it into a separate video altogether, or including it in the last part, including it as part of the last episode of the series? Please let me know in the comments, or you know what, I will make a little poll, I'll make a little survey for you guys to voice out your preferences. So if you guys would rather see the house tour as part of the 5th part of this video, let me know, or if you guys would rather have it as a completely separate part of the video. I think I'm leaning towards the separate part, but I'd love to hear what you guys feel about it. So I will make a little, you know, I will make a little survey on my channel. So hopefully you guys will participate on that and vote. So yeah, hopefully that will help me make a decision. And then pretty much the last really structure that we're making is this back gate, which actually leads to a little wharf port area, and then eventually I will put a boat, which is so funny because when you think about it, this moat that surrounds the castle really doesn't lead anywhere. So I don't think there's a lot of use in having a boat there, but it still works, I think. I like the idea of having a boat there. Maybe we can say that the moat itself is connected to, I don't know, maybe like a body of water, a river or something, and the boat could be an escape because that area is actually really close to where the king's bedroom is, so we'll just say that it's like a secret escape thing. But I think this build is pretty much coming to an end, so once again I'm reminding you guys to keep an eye out for the next couple of parts will be uploaded really soon. And yeah, we're just painting the castle with some whitewashed bricks, which is pretty typical, but yeah, Part 2 will be up tomorrow, so keep your eye out for it. And I guess that's pretty much it for my commentary part of this video. So thank you guys so much for watching. You all have an awesome day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye!